I know this is a crazy, surreal time to be doing anything like this,
Yeah.
but I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time too. I mean, there's as you said, a lot going on. I mean, there's certainly it's nice to have a little bit of something, normal-ish, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just, I find myself not knowing any correct thing to say these days. So just trying to listen and ask questions and actually listen to the answers was my hope now. So.
No, I think that's a great one. May I ask where are you sheltering in place?
In Los Angeles. So I'm with my, I have a place in Los Angeles and a place in New York. I was supposed to start directing an episode of Modern Love for Amazon that I had written. And then all of that production obviously was sort of halted for the moment. So I came back here and have been here ever since. What about you? Are you in Los Angeles?
Yeah, West Hollywood. So talk to me a little bit about that Modern Love episode. It was that. I'm very excited, and hopefully, at some point we'll get back into it. I've written 2 essays for Modern Love, and this is loosely based on the first essay that I wrote. They asked if I would be interested in trying to adapt it, and then John Carney, their executive producer and creator, then suggested that maybe I direct it as well, which I was really sort of floored by. So it was a very exciting process leading up to it. I loved adapting it, and the idea of directing it is really exciting. So we'll see. Is your plan to also be in it, or are you?
No, which is great. The way they sort of ask you to adapt those stories is it doesn't have to be a literal translation of or adaptation of the essay. So I was able to kind of open it up and change some things, and not for nothing, that essay was written when I was 22. So I was like, we got to pull that camera way back. We're going to make that work. So luckily I don't have to put myself in that. So
have you given thought to what it's going to be like to cast yourself?
Well, that's the nice thing is that, in being able to adapt it with a little more openly, like it is aspects of me, I suppose, but the other character, there's also aspects of me in that guy too now. So it's a version, but we're not attached to, I'm not attached to, finding somebody who looks like me or sounds like me, or I think it's just more, we're looking, we'll cast 2 really great actors who are age appropriate for the story and go from there. So that would be very stressful to be like, who's gonna play me? But luckily that's off the table. So that's good.
No, that's wonderful. I mean, we're here to talk about everything. We can talk about whatever you like. We can talk about Lego for as much as you want.
We are here to talk about Black Monday on the Showtime. Back on June 28th.
Back on June 28th. I've caught up through the screeners that they sent out, and so I fully versed in the whole season. And I guess I wanted to the first question that came up when we were discussing discussing the show was, did you get to choose the Halloween costume?
I did. They just said it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as I recall, just sort of floated that idea out there that maybe that would be appropriate for Blair. Yeah. And Liz, to be honest with you, I just wanted professionals to put me in that getup. I just wanted to be in that costume.
Yeah, I feel like it's not a huge spoiler to say that, I'm sure it's in promotional photos and so forth, that you're dressed as George Michael.
I'm dressed as George Michael, like Faith era specifically, George Michael. It was fun to get, professional hair and makeup people and professional costumers come together with that look. And then I just got to step into it every day. So yeah, I did. Yeah.
Now, I mean, was George Michael a figure of significance for you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's very much so. A big George Michael fan of his early work, and then also in his later career. So yeah, big
big fan of his. So it was just sort of a silly tribute on my part that I wanted to get dressed up.
No, I mean, and I'm trying to, I wish I should have done more research on George Michael, I suppose. But I'm trying to remember when he came out, because I feel like it was relatively it wasn't like super late, but it wasn't also super early.
No, and I don't have the exact date for you either. But I think it was sort of a coded situation. Mm-hmm. So some people knew, but he didn't have to say it. And then I think when his arrest happened in Beverly Hills, which was a total sting operation and was like really horrible. I think that's when people were like, oh. But I also remember like being pretty young at the time and people just sort of like knowing that, like saying like, oh yeah, of course that's true. I mean, nobody could like back it up, but that was just like a thing that was kind of known, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially to discuss in the context of Black Monday, because, you know, at the very beginning of the series, I remember watching it wondering if Blair was going to turn out to be gay, or if this was you in a straight role. Yeah. And I mean, did you have a sense of where they were going to take it?
Yeah, we talked through the whole first season while we were doing the pilot and sort of what the trajectory would be. But that, and I mean, my only thought to David and Jordan, our creators, was just that if we don't really have the real estate to dive into this, to have a character come out at the height of the AIDS crisis, if we don't have the space to tell a realistic story, then I would rather not fully dive into it and keep it sort of a little murky and a little more personal, and, you know, not that he's like kicking the closet doors open by the end of the first season. So I think they very wisely wrote this just sort of very conflicted character who, you know, still gets married and then has a very sort of heartfelt conversation with Dawn, Regina Hall's character, about being confused about what he is. But then at the same time, you don't know if he's just playing people to sort of get other people on their side. I mean, now in the second season, is Blair is in a fully sexual relationship with Congressman Harris, played by Tuck Watkins. Now we sort of get what's happening. But but at the time I thought that was that they handled that very well, because we didn't really have the real estate by the end of the season to get into that story. So I think they wrote a really great couple of episodes where we just kind of teased it a little bit, and then in the second season have had much more room to explore it. So that's good.
No, it's been exciting to see them like really play with the material, especially given like the curveball in season 1, where it's revealed that Paul Scheer's character is gay.
Yes.
And so it was kind of, that was an interesting moment. And I don't really have any good context for why I thought it was interesting. Just.
No, I think that there was a lot going on with both of those characters. And it's already kind of for a Wall Street brokerage firm like that, it's already kind of an oddball outcast island of misfit toys sort of situation with, Yasser and Horatio and me and Paul. And so I feel like that was a nice way to sort of tell both of those stories without stepping on either one of them.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of how, because Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I don't know if you watch that show at all, but because it has like multiple characters with the same ethnicity, none of them are pigeonholed as the black guy or the Latina female.
Absolutely. I mean, there's certainly room for all of us to exist in the same office. So
one of the things I wanted to make sure I asked you was the question of, when you walk down the street, what role do you feel like, if people recognize you, what role do they usually recognize you from? But my if I was going to bet on it, my bet would be girls.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Some of it weirdly depends. I mean, I feel very fortunate that I've had a career that I've gotten to do work in a lot of different mediums. I've gotten to work on Broadway a lot and gotten to do a couple movies, but then also worked on television for a while. So it kind of both network and cable. So it really just sort of depends on the neighborhood, quite frankly. Like if I'm in Midtown, obviously people will recognize me from doing Broadway. But then if I'm downtown or if I'm in Brooklyn, it's more likely that someone would say, oh, that's that guy from Girls. If I'm at an airport in the Midwest, I get recognized for my 2 episodes of How I Met Your Mother or The Intern, because a lot of people watch that on a plane. So it's just hard to say.
No. Yeah, but, I mean, I feel like that
most likely Girls. Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, to say it's just Girls is also a little bit of an undercuts to the degree to which you were in 2 of the biggest Broadway plays of the decade.
But not everybody gets to see those things, and we didn't. You know, this was the Book of Mormon. We never like filmed it like that. I mean, we did get a lot of press, and I think that we got a lot of unexpected press for a Broadway show. But you know, not everybody gets to go to New York and see stuff. So, I mean, I always get a kick out of when people are surprised. They're like, "Oh, do you sing? I didn't know you sang," and which is just so funny because that's like the only thing I wanted to do was to do musical theater, and I guess like now I've kind of drifted away from that a little bit. So that's yeah, it's always a funny surprise. I was also on Sex and the City as a headless stripper. I don't think I was. You never saw my face, but I was. That was my first on-camera job. I was a headless stripper.
What was that experience?
It was not great. It was the episode where Charlotte admits to Anthony that she's sleeping with Harry, her divorce lawyer, and they're in a gay bar. So the scene starts, and it's 2 men in Speedos, like grinding against each other, and that's me and another young man. And then it comes down to Kristen Davis and Mario Cantona, and they're just like watching us talking about that. And I had never been on a film set like that before, and I was like, the other guy and I had to like oil each other up in front of everyone. It was just like 50 background like staring at us, and then Kristen Davis is like sitting there like watching me like put baby oil on. I was like, what the hell is happening? So for a long time, it was a credit that I left on my resume. Now I feel free that I can just mention that to be like, yes, I was a headless stripper. But then cut to Girls on that very same soundstage at Silver Cup in Long Island City. And then I got to actually speak lines for the first time on television, but for HBO and on that very same stage. So it's pretty crazy.
You know, it's been a couple of years, and I feel like that show was such a lightning rod for conversation. I'm saying conversation, not controversy, because I thought all the conversations it generated were really interesting. And now that it's been a couple of years and the conversations have quieted down, like, you know, you look back on it, how do you feel about it?
I mean, I'm so proud to have been a part of it. I think it was such a zeitgeisty show, as you said. It was a lightning rod for a lot of conversation, and there was some controversy occasionally based on that show. But I feel like, and you know, we were also sort of this. I mean, it was in 2011 that we were filming it. I think it aired in like January or March of 2012. I think that's right. But weirdly, like, before the sort of over exposure of Instagram and even Twitter to a certain extent, like, yes, that all existed and yes, it was used, but it didn't seem quite as prevalent. So I think that our kind of moment lasted a little bit longer than it might today, just because people get over things so quickly and talk about other things. And there's so much content out there. And I think that even, you know, not quite 10 years ago, there wasn't quite as much content. So that show was allowed to sort of hold a spot for a long time, which I'm very proud of. And I'm proud of the work that we all did on that show. And I'll always be very grateful that was my first real TV job.
Yeah.
Aside from being a headless stripper.
Aside from that.
Yeah. I mean, not that I wasn't in my underwear all the time on Girls. I mean, Jesus. Like constantly signing nudity waivers. Part of the gig.
Yeah. But actually, I'm curious because, you know, of course, there's been this recent uptick in, intimacy coordinators. Is that something that Black Monday has?
We went through the new kind of sexual harassment seminar.
Mm-hmm.
And when Tuck and I filmed all of our sex scenes, we did not have someone on set. And I don't know if that's because we were in a real couple or I don't know. But I will say the directors we had for those episodes and really let Tuck and I sort of figure out how we wanted to do it. And our camera crew was great about figuring out angles and all of that so we could make it be as realistic but also like comfortable for everybody as possible. But yeah, I haven't worked with an intimacy coordinator yet. I don't know what that says about me.
Well, it just means that you haven't hit that project yet.
I haven't, I guess, but I've done plenty of sex scenes. But yeah, they didn't really exist on Girls. But I do remember always feeling, and I didn't have a ton of sex scenes. I think Corey Stoll and I was maybe the first time I ever had to do something like that. Mm-hmm. And Jesse Peretz was directing it, and I think that he kind of let us block it, let Corey and I figure out sort of what made the most sense for us. But I always felt very, safe and seen and protected on that set. So
that's wonderful. I mean, that seems like the kind of environment that Lena really tried to create there.
Yeah. Yes, I think that because she's the star of the show, Lena was the, executive producer, the head writer on that show. I think that, and she was sort of game to do everything. So I think that as a result, she was never going to ask us to do something that she wasn't willing to do, but she was also very collaborative about, if there was anything we needed to push back on, she was always open to having that conversation.
Were there conversations about stuff that Elijah might have done that you were like, maybe pull back on that?
This is just silly, but it was so long ago that I feel like I could say it, if that's okay.
Yeah,
it was in the episodes where Hannah is at grad school. She's at grad school, and I surprised her by showing up, and I was in a towel, like I've been in the shower, and I come out, and she initially asked me to put it up here,
mm-hmm.
And I said, why? And she said, because it's funnier. And I said, but men don't do that. And she was like, oh, yeah. Sorry. I was like, I mean, it's not, I get the sight gag, but I was like, it seems a little, I don't know. And she was, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. And then from that point on, if there was an issue, she would be like, is this a towel situation? I'd be like, yeah.
It's good to have that kind of shorthand.
Yeah. Just like, nope, not doing it.
Production is in such a weird topsy-turvy place. And I know that you've got like a couple, I know you're in Ryan Murphy's The Prom, and which is almost done from what I've heard, like two more scenes are missing.
2 more scenes, but they're very contained scenes, and they're also outdoors, I believe. Okay. So I don't know. I think if anybody can figure that out, it's Ryan Murphy. We also have for Ryan, Boys in the Band,
right?
That will be coming out in the fall that our whole Broadway cast got to do, which was really, really fun. So, I mean, there's things like that are finished and coming up. But, as we said at the beginning of this, it does feel like a strange time to be, self-promoting anything, quite frankly, because who's leaving the house and who wants to leave the house. But at the same time, I feel like that's always kind of what entertainers have done historically is provide some small escape when needed. And, if a movie like Boys in the Band or The Prom provides that for someone while they're at home, then I hope that's the case. And same thing with Black Monday. Like, if we can make some people laugh in their houses, I'm all for it. So, yeah.
I mean, and in terms of new story, the ways in which we can tell stories right now, I know, you've been doing, voiceover since before you were on Broadway.
Yeah, we're in full swing production with Big Mouth.
Right.
So this will be our, I lose track. This is 4.
I think it's your 4th season, but it also it seems like because you guys don't record together.
We record it all,
and then like a year later it comes out. And by the time it comes out, we've recorded a whole other season.
Right.
So there are times where I get confused about the number, but we're in production right now. We're able to record remotely, and then they can send it off to be animated, and everybody's sort of figuring that out. And same thing with post-production for Boys in the Band, that, we're figuring out ways to do it from home if we can. So just getting creative.
Yeah, I mean, that's been not that there's any bright side whatsoever to what's going on, but it has been really interesting to see the ways in which people are, trying to experiment with stuff. And, I've been watching, I watched a live play a couple of weeks ago that was performed by 2 actors remotely via Zoom.
That's very cool. I did the same thing. My friend Zuzana Shapkovsky was in a reading of Much Ado About Nothing, I think, which I was like, how the hell is this going to work? And it, you know what? It was great. It didn't have the same sort of maybe immediacy of live that live theater normally does, but it still was a way to be entertaining and to get people out there. So a little distracting.
Yeah, it's like, and because it is interesting, like I also watched National Theater's been releasing some of their productions for free on YouTube. And I was watching one of them, and the difference between watching something that was definitely pre-recorded and edited versus watching something that was actually happening, like even just remotely, like it does have an impact.
It's and it's tricky. I got to do one for PBS for Falsettos on Broadway a few years ago, and it was such a great experience. But it was we only recorded 2 live performances, and it was I remember talking to James Lapine after the first one, the director, and I was like, "Are we adjusting enough? Are we?" Because all of a sudden you're going from playing for like a 1,000-seat theater to now having a camera in your face. And I think we were all a little kind of thrown for a second that the mashup of those 2 mediums can be a little tricky. But I agree, the ones that I've seen, like if you've ever seen any of those Lincoln Center performances that are just wide shots of things happening, they're really thrilling to see, because you're like, oh, that's what it really looked like. But then if you have the time to sort of adjust your performance a little bit for those tighter angles, then, that's great too, but not always the case. But I'm thrilled that those theater companies are putting that out there. I think Lincoln Center is going to do more of that. And I know PBS is re-airing a lot of their shows. So I'm so happy that they're doing that. Yeah.
So I apologize for not knowing this, but are you the King George in the recorded Hamilton?
I am not. No, I think that is
rough.
I imagine that's got to be Jonathan. I mean, it could be Brian Darcy James, but I'm pretty positive it's Jonathan, because they recorded it. I was only there for 5 weeks while Jonathan did the Looking finale, but it was right after they opened. So the show, like, people obviously were clamoring to get tickets, but it was right when they opened that I went in. But then I'm pretty sure it must be Jonathan. It's got to be him. But we joked as because we've been friends for a long time, and we were joking that, the audiences probably wouldn't even really know, because we're both like the same height, have similar voices, and that they could just be like, oh, it's that gay guy from HBO. And nobody would be disappointed, because they were correct. One of the Ham for Hams I constantly find myself rewatching is the one where you and the 3 of you do the Schuyler sisters. Yeah, it's pretty. That was really fun, and that was right before I joined. I don't think I was even in the show yet. I think it was Jonathan's last week before I came in. It was just such a trip to get to be a part of that, because even just for a little bit. Because it was such a crazy force of nature. And I had gone through it with Book of Mormon, to some extent, with like just all the celebrities that come and all of the people who want tickets, and just getting to sort of relive a situation like that again was nuts. It was just nuts. Were you trying to line up any stage work after you were finishing Modern Love? Yeah, but I mean, I think that the schedule we had been on was that Black Monday usually starts filming in like late August, early September. So, I mean, I was going to kind of give myself a little bit of break because we went from I did Boys in the Band, and then I did all of Black Monday, and then I did the prom, and they all overlapped. So it was like 9 months of just like panic of trying to, and luckily it all worked, and everybody was so great about making those schedules come together, but it was stressful getting it all done. So I was going to give myself a teensy bit of a break and then hopefully go back to Black Monday, but we'll see. I mean, I'd love to go back to the theater. I think your guess is as good as mine as to when that might happen. In terms of when theaters will be reopening, but hopefully that will always be something I will want to do.
Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, it feels like it's an opportunity to stretch a different muscle.
Yeah. Well, and it's sort of where I feel most comfortable, honestly, because that's what I came to New York to do. And that's my first decade of working professionally was all theater, and specifically musical theater. So getting to go back to that feels very safe to me and feels very familiar. So if I can do more of that, I would love it.
Yeah. Or get Black Monday to do a musical episode.
There could be that too.
Why not do that? I mean, I'm sure everyone can sing in that cast.
Sing. Yeah, we could figure that out. We could totally figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be great. I feel like this has been a really nice conversation. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I did have one final fun thing from in regards to girls.
Yeah.
I interviewed years ago for the final season. I did like kind of a chat with Lena, and she mentioned you should pay attention to the last line any character says in the series, and because every time they do it, it has she's like, it has significance to who that character is. And I looked it up this morning, and do you remember what your final line of Girls was?
I remember it involved me calling them feckless whores.
Yes.
It was like, see you later, you feckless whores, or something. What was the beginning of it?
I got it. I got the part in White Men Can't Jump, the fucking musical, you feckless whores. Hannah, I will see you at home tomorrow at roughly noon when I'm done partying this out. Eat a dick.
Eat a dick.
I apologize for my delivery there.
I remember, yes, the feckless whores. And I remember, and that was sort of sad because I didn't know it was my last day. I was supposed to be in the finale, like in the series finale. And then it was rewritten, and then Elijah was taken out of it. So I didn't know that was going to be my last line, but I'm happy that it was, because it was really just like spoke to his whole character.
Yeah. And also it's like a moment of triumph. Like because that earlier in the season, he'd been freaking out about going up for the audition.
Yeah. So the fact that he gets it, and that I got to call them feckless whores, was really, it was a great triumph for Elijah. And, I can't think of a better way for him to exit, particularly given the way that he entered in the first place. Like, not a ton of growth there, but that's all right. That's all right.
Sometimes it's not needed.
No. Sometimes people take a long time to change. That's all.
Yeah. But I mean, meantime, like, I'm really excited to see, how the rest of Black Monday goes.
Let's talk after you see it, because and watch 10 too. I want to see what you think.
Of course. You can't probably go into any sort of detail, but is season 3 something that is on people's minds?
It's definitely on everyone's mind. I think that, we kind of got caught up in the reality of what was happening in the world, and what, work was going to look like, and how quickly could we come back, and how quickly can you even start a writer's room, like things like that. Like, so I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, it's a bit of a head scratcher, but I know that we would all love to. So we'll just see. We'll just have to see.
Well, thank you again so much for your time. It's been such a pleasure, and stay safe out there.
Thank you, you too.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.